How about a little Halloween in this summer? Even monsters need a beach day, right? Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. I am late to the party, but this is part of the June-O-Ween challenge hosted by Annie Jones to celebrate Halloween in June. You'll find links to Annie's channel as well as the playlist in the description box. So you know what? Let's get into it. For DIY 1, Floating Frankie, we're starting off with 2 styrofoam balls and a stray disc-shaped piece of styrofoam that, was just a random piece I had laying around. So I've cut about a third of the foam away from the bottom of the larger ball, and I've flattened the top of it as well. And I've cut flat spots on top and bottom of the smaller ball. We'll use some Model Magic to cover the foam, and we're going to need some toothpicks too. First thing is to cover the top of the smaller ball, his head, with 3-in-1 glue, and I'll push a toothpick into the center and slide the foam disc on top. I flattened a handful of clay with my brayer, and I'll cover the larger foam ball. I just press it onto the foam, ensuring that it has good contact, and I'm going to work it until the surface is covered, adding pieces of clay where necessary, and tearing them away, if it's too much in any given space. I roll it around on the table and smooth it with my hands until I'm happy with it. I do cover the bottom too. I'm not sure I show you that, but I do. And I repeat this process with his head. Now, for his head, I thought it would be easier because of that disc on top to come around from the sides and work the clay in that way. But it's the same basic premise. And I do cover the top and bottom of his head with clay. And again, I just work the clay until everything is covered and it's relatively smooth. Doesn't have to be perfect. He's a monster after all. Basically I just had fun with it. Next, I rolled out 2 clay snakes, one long and thick enough to wrap around his body. This is going to be his wee float. And then I did a smaller snake that will be his arms. So I'm just going to wrap this around the bottom of his body, and I'll cut off the excess and pinch it together in the back. So he kind of looks a little bit like Saturn, but, flat on bottom. Before I add his arms, I'm going to attach his head with toothpicks. I'm just pushing them right into that flattened spot on the top, and I'll slide his head right on there. I'll fill in the gap between his head and body with another thinner snake to join those 2 sections. I just push it right in there, and I use my clay tool to join the clay. But you know what, a paintbrush handle works fine for this too, which is what I always used prior to getting these clay tools. I basically just want the clay that I just added to meld with the clay that's already on the head and body. I cut his arm snake in half lengthwise, then again across to give me 2 arms. I push his arms into place, and I want his hands to be resting on the float. So I'm going to kind of give a little dent there to make his hand, look like it's kind of bent over the float. And I'm just going to round out the edges. Frankie is a little afraid of the water, so I decided he should have water wings. So I just rolled more snake, a little thicker, and pushed them onto his arms. And I'm going to roll the handle over him just to make sure that they have good contact with the other clay. He's finally dry and ready for paint. I'm going to give his face and arms 2 coats of Americana Pistachio mint. He actually took extra long to dry, I guess because of the weather. Normally overnight he'd be good enough to paint, but actually I had to wait 2 days before I could paint him. Okay, so we're going to move through the base coating pretty quickly. so we can get to the details. I gave his hair 2 coats of Ceramcoat Hippo Gray. Two coats of Ceramcoat Pumpkin for his surf shirt. He's got a surf shirt because, you know, he doesn't want sunburn. Being a creature of the night and all. And of course I'm going to do the back too. His float ring and his water wings are going to get 2 coats of white. For a nice summery look, let's stripe his shirt with Ceramcoat Calypso Orange, and I'll use my liner brush to add some Tropic base stripes too. And again, everything I do to the front, I do to the back. I'll stripe his float and his water wings with Americana Bluegrass Green, and I'm going to add Americana Warm Sunset stripes too. The Warm Sunset is like a burnt orange almost. And I'll use my liner brush to add those. Once again, I'll use my liner brush and some Ceramcoat Ring Gray to stripe his hair, give it a little definition. And I go all the way around the sides with this. I'm dotting on his cheeks with Americana Mint Julep. It's slightly darker than the Pistachio Mint. With Americana Irish Moss, I'll dot his nose and add lines where his eyes will go. I'm using a dowel to dot the whites of his eyes. They go just over his cheeks in the center of the lines. And let's paint in his lightning bolt and his mouth with Irish Moss. And we'll give him a big old smile. I'm using Hippo Gray to give him eyebrows and pupils. And some white dot highlights on his cheeks, nose, and eyes. Let's grab the floating medium and do some shading. I prep my brush with the floating medium. I sideload by scooping paint onto the corner of my brush. This is Irish Moss. I'll stroke the brush on my plate to load the bristles. This will spread the paint across the brush, and it'll be darkest at the corner of the brush, and it fades as it moves toward the middle, giving me a gradient of color. I'm holding the pink corner of my brush to the edge of his hairline, and I'll stroke, outlining, around his face, anywhere where there should be a shadow. Now I'll shade around the bottom of his face and his neck, and then onto his arms. So basically, like I said, I'm just shading anywhere that there would be a shadow. I'm going to go up along the water wing and in the crease of his hand and around the bottom of his hand. And then along the sides of his arms too, where they meet his body. His surf shirt is shaded with Ceramcoat Glowing Ember, which is a reddish orange. And as always, I'm going to have a list of all the brands and colors of paints in the description box for you. I'll use a little Tropic Bay Blue to shade his float, mostly where the white is. And I'll come in with Ceramcoat Charcoal to shade his hairline. I also painted the flat ends of cocktail toothpicks with charcoal to serve as his neck bolts. Just going to push them right in there, no glue needed. I did cut them to size first. So I'm looking at him thinking, what's missing? I forgot his ears. So I made them separately, and I'll use 3-in-1 glue to attach them. I just rolled a small ball of clay and cut it in half to make the ears. I cut wee bats from vinyl, teal vinyl, that I'll use to decorate his shirt, and then I'm going to seal him with a coat of Mod Podge using a cosmetic sponge to pounce it on. And there's our wee floating Frankie. He's very happy to be on vacation. This is Frankie's friend, Hexabel. We start out the wee witch the same way as we did with Frankie, covering 2 foam balls with clay. I prepped the balls the same way, cut about 1/3 off the bottom of the larger ball, flattened a spot on the top, and did 2 flat spots on the smaller ball. To make her hat, I'll use a circle cookie cutter to make the brim from some flattened clay. Then I'll roll a cone shape for the pointy part of the hat. I'll flatten out the bottom just by pushing it on the table. I'll roll the point into a coil, just for some whimsy, and then I'm going to press the cone onto the brim. I attached the head to the body with toothpicks and fill in the gap with a clay snake just like I did with Frankie. It's the exact same process. To make her hair, I'll roll a bunch of snakes, thin skinny snakes, and place them all around her head, but I won't make you watch all that. I gave her bangs too in the front and a wee straight curl. This is her wee curl right here. How cute. I attach her hat with a toothpick, just slide it right on there, and I press it down a wee bit to make sure it's stuck. She'll get her float and her arms just like Frankie did. She doesn't need water wings though, because she's a strong swimmer. I decided they needed clay noses. I was just going to paint them in, but anyway. So I rolled small balls of clay and pressed them into place on both Frankie and Hexabah. In case you were wondering why Frankie had a clay nose and I didn't mention it, this is why. I made them at the same time. Anywho, Hexie gets 2 coats of pistachio mint on her face and hands, just like Frankie did, and I'm going to give her hair 2 coats of Hippo gray. I painted the hair under her hat first because I thought it was easier, to get in under there before I did anything else. I wanted to get in all those little nooks and crannies. Her swimsuit gets 2 coats of Tropic Bay. She's left her black clothes behind because she's on holiday after all. We'll paint her hat to match. She's stylish, and that's how she rolls. Two coats of Ceramcoat pumpkin for her float. Pumpkin reminds her of Halloween. Mint julep cheeks, just like Frankie. Irish moss eye lines and happy smile, 'cause, vacation. White dot eyes. Hippo gray pupils, brows, and la lashes. And of course, white dot highlights on her cheeks, nose, and eyes. Her swimsuit gets a wee jack-o'-lantern sticker that I cut from orange vinyl. Now let's prissy her up with polka dots. We'll give her some pumpkin, some bluegrass green, a wee bit of Calypso orange, and a touch of white. We'll stripe her float with white and hippo gray, reminiscent of Halloween. Time to shade. Again, same process for loading my brush, and we're using Irish moss for her face and hands, just like we did for Frankie. So you can see I'm just going around, all the details on her face, like around her hair, around the bottom of her chin, around her neck, etc. I'm using Americana Bluegrass Green to shade around her swimsuit and her hat. I used Ceramcoat Glowing Ember to shade her float. And you know what? I'm going to add a dab of Bluegrass too. I'll come in with Ceramcoat Charcoal and I'm going to dry brush her hair. I lightly outline the pumpkin on her swimsuit with white to make a pop. She'll get sealed with a coat of Mod Podge, and I'll glue a piece of festooning to her hat for extra cuteness. I had this left over from my beach-themed DIYs. Hexabah's enjoying her time at Boo-kini Beach. Even the Loch Ness Monster needs a getaway. This one is quick. I rolled out a snake slightly thinner at one end, and I made a slight bend in it to make Nessie's head. I cut some from the bottom to make it a wee bit shorter and to flatten it out. I rolled the ball for her notorious hump, and I flattened the bottom of that. I rolled another cone-shaped snake for her tail, and we'll put a wee hook in it, so that it curls over a wee bit. To make the wee sand dune, I'll cover a scrap from one of the foam balls in clay. Now that she's dry, I'll give Nessie 2 coats of Ceramcoat Turquoise. She gets white dot eyes on both sides of her head. I'll dot her cheek with Bluegrass Green, and she'll get a bluegrass eyeline and smile. Hippo gray pupils. Blue-gray lashes and brows, and I also gave her little nostrils in the front of her face. White highlights to her eyes and cheeks, and to make her pretty, pumpkin, Tropic Bay, Calypso orange, and white dots all over. And now I'll dry brush her with bluegrass, concentrating mostly there at the bottom of each piece, but a little all over too, just to give her a little character. Let's get some in there in the curve of her tail too. I painted the sand dune with Americana bleached sand and dry brushed it with Ceramcoat latte. Then I sprinkled it by wetting an old toothbrush and dipping it into the latte and dragging my thumb over the bristles. I painted a wood slat with white, dry brushed it with rain gray, and I'll add my vinyl lettering to make the Boo-kini Beach sign. Nessie, the dune, and the sign will all get a coat of Mod Podge. I also added a little vinyl bat to the Boo-kini Beach sign. I'll hot glue a skewer to the sign, stick it in the sand dune, and Monsters on Holiday is complete. Let's take a final look. I love Halloween, and I love the summer and the beach, so this was the perfect combination of some of my favorite things. I hope you enjoyed today's project. Thank you, Annie, for hosting the June-O-Ween collaboration. It was a lot of fun. Please be sure to check out her channel. It's linked below in the description box, along with the playlist and a list of my supplies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Stay creative, my friends. Thanks for hanging with me. See you next time. Up all night with Monica.